It's Jamie with Color Flutter Creations, and I just had a fun, hilarious crafting session with my friends. So today's card is going to feature the Magic World paper pad. This is a 6x6 double-sided paper pad. I already have my card panel cut using the lighter kind of argyle pattern, and that's going to become the base layer for our card. I'm going to pair that background piece with the Owl Always Be Your Friend die set from the new release of Pixie Dust Designs. And I think this owl is really cute, and there's a lot of ways we can use it. Plus, I love a good punny sentiment. I've die cut all the pieces from the die set, and this little envelope comes together really simple. So there are some embossed lines where the flaps of the envelope are going to fold in. Using liquid adhesive, I put some in the center, fold the flaps of the sides in, and then I take the liquid adhesive and put it on each of the other flaps before folding those in. Hold it just for a second to make sure that it is adhered nicely and not going to come apart. Then I put a little dot of adhesive glue into the center of the envelope where I'm going to put my wax seal die. And there you have it. It's really a cute little envelope. And I actually ended up cutting a bunch of them out. The owl comes together really nicely as well. There are some embossed details to it, which I absolutely love. And that's in addition to the lines that's going to show you the placement of where the pieces are going to go in order to create your owl. Before putting everything together, I want to do some sentiment embossing first. So I have my Owl Always Be Your Friend sentiment placed into my MISTI, and I'm using some black ink to make sure that I stamp the sentiment very crisp before using clear embossing powder over this. Once my sentiment is embossed, I am going to trim it down to the size that I want it. So now I have it on this smaller rectangle. I'm using a corner punch to add a little bit of additional interest. So it's not just squared off on the corners, but it kind of gives me this nice little scroll-esque effect. I'm then taking some brown ink and I'm going to ink up the edges just to create some additional dimension and depth. And again, I'm trying to go for kind of a scrollish effect with this sentiment. I really enjoy using my corner punch. This is a great reminder that if you have one, use it. It really does add a little bit of additional interest to your sentiments. Once I'm done inking up the edges of my sentiment, I am going to move on to distressing the edges. I have some sharp scissors here, and I don't care if it slices up the paper, the cardstock like it is. I want this to really be a distressed parchment scroll look. And now I know the placement of my other elements on the card so I can finish my background. I have a bunch of those envelopes that I die cut out that I showed earlier, and I'm just placing those in the areas that my owl and my sentiment are not going to be. Moving on to my snowy owl. Yes, I wanted a snowy owl for my card, but I don't want all of the embossed details from this die to get lost with the tone on tone of the white cardstock. So I'm adding a bit of a light gray inking. This is Lost Shadow Distress Oxide ink. And I'm adding this around all of the owl elements. Now, I think that this color of gray kind of has a warm tone to it. So I add a little bit more of a kind of a warm tone, which with the brown. Now I didn't ink up my dauber there. I just used what was already on my sponge. And now I'm going to go ahead and layer my die cut owl elements, starting with the head. And I think you can see really clearly how inking around the edges of these die cut pieces really do create the dimension. Putting that head over the body of my owl, you can see those kind of tan, brownish and gray lines, and that's adding that depth that you would think of when you're seeing a face of an owl. The owl comes together really simple and very nicely. You have the body, the head, placement of then where the eyes are going to go, and then these additional wing elements. I then put the body of my owl aside, and I work a little backwards sometimes. So I wanted to get the placement of the inkwell. So I put that together, and that way I know where exactly that's going to be. I did cut this out of two different cardstocks just to kind of show you that if you have some background that has more color to it, that's a great way to use that background scraps for cutting an inkwell. In putting together the scarf, I'm taking a little maroon ink and just adding a touch of that around the edges of the scarf layers. I have the base layer of my scarf, and then now I'm going to use my liquid adhesive just at the very top, and I'm going to lay the tail onto the base layer. There is this little hook kind of piece that shows you where you can put it. Hopefully you can see it, but it makes it look like the tail, of course, is coming over, the base layer that goes around the neck. There's another little piece that fits right at the very bottom of the tail, and this creates a little bit of extra dimension. Moving back over to our owl, we're going to start placing the rest of the elements. The eyes are not completely round, so you need to make sure that you're fitting them within the spaces and using the proper left to right eye shape. There's a little black layer, which I absolutely love. This puts a little bit of sparkle into the eyes. And I have a hard time laying things down straight sometimes. So when I have the glue dry, my element on the eye, if there's a little bit of white that is showing, I'm just taking a black marker and going around the edges. I think that finishes this off really nicely. And then you don't have to worry about, did I lay my black piece on the eye, completely straight? It's sometimes hard to do that with smaller pieces. So I think this is a great little hack, and one works wonderfully with this die set. And look at the eyes coming together on this owl. This to me is the wow die cut piece from this set, because those eyes are just adorable to me. I really do think that they're just so cute. And then I'm going to go ahead and place in all of the other pieces, the beak, the feet, then the scarf kind of overlay onto that as well. This owl is just coming together really cute. Now, I didn't do any additional inking to the other elements on the owl other than the owl itself and the scarf. Putting together the hat. There are some embossed lines you can see of where the top of the hat is going to overlay onto this kind of brim. I didn't know exactly how this was going to fit onto my owl. So what I decided to do, and what I found just easiest, was to put a little bit of liquid adhesive just on the inner part of where those lines are, and then overlay the top of the hat onto those pieces. A little bit of glue was kind of sticking out, so I did have to take my nail, or I could have taken my pick or something, piece of paper, whatever, to get that off. I then make sure it's lined up really straight. And as you can see here, I'm going to try and use my tweezers to show you that the center of this pieces together is actually unglued. So I can slip the hat over the owl's head. I'm careful because I don't want to damage my owl, but this is the way that I found it best to figure out how to fit it together and to fit onto my owl. Isn't that just cute? I love this owl. I can then take my liquid adhesive and I can gently lift up that brim of that hat, put the adhesive, and then lay it down. And I do the same thing to the back side of the owl. This way I know the hat is secure onto my owl's head. Totally adorable, and I absolutely love this. And the hat was made from scraps. Same thing with this feather. I used the same scrap piece from my stash that had a mix of I don't know, bronze and gold and whatnot on black cardstock, and I think it works really well. I also love that the feather, while it's the quill that goes into the inkwell, can also be used on the hat. So, if you had some kind of Robin Hood theme, totally use that feather and put a feather in the hat, Yankee Doodle Dandy it all day long. For this project though, I am putting this quill into my inkwell, and I just use a little liquid adhesive, put it on the back of, or the bottom of the quill or the back of the inkwell, and then I kind of tilted it just a little bit. And now I can see where everything is going to actually align to finish out my card. I place foam adhesive onto the back of my sentiment so that I can pop it up right into the top right corner where you don't see any of those envelopes. And that's where it's gonna lay nice and neat. I really do like this sentiment, and that inking around the edges, the distressing really does make it look like parchment. I then take foam adhesive, put it on the back of my owl where I know that's going to go in that bottom left corner. I did not put any adhesive on the hat because I wasn't quite sure the thickness of adhesive I needed. But once it's laid down and I kind of know, I then cut a small piece and stick it to the back of the hat. And there our owl is nice, adhered to the front of our card panel, so I can finish it out with the placement of my inkwell. I used a small drop of liquid adhesive on the back of the inkwell before placing that onto my card panel and tucking that just a little bit under that owl's wing. I then put a drop of adhesive onto the back part of the feather where that's overlaying on my envelopes. There are a few kind of open or blank spots on my background piece, so I have some extra envelopes already die cut and put together. And I'm just going to go ahead and adhere those into the center of the additional kind of argyle pattern. So I put one on the left, I'm going to put one just a little bit under my sentiment, and this is going to help make it look a little bit fuller and not quite so patchworky. Once the envelopes are dried onto my card panel, I'm going to take some scissors and trim off the excess that is overhanging. I use some liquid adhesive to adhere my card panel onto a black card base. I think it really makes the card pop. And all of these additional inking dimensions, the foam adhesive, that kind of scroll parchment sentiment, it just makes for a pretty stunning card using the paper pad. That's this Magic World paper pad. I like the patterns here. If you are a wizarding fan, this paper pad is going to go really far for you. Also, the Owl Always Be Your Friend die set with that sentiment. Love a good punny sentiment. And I really like how versatile this set is. Using that owl as standalone will work perfectly for multiple projects. I appreciate you joining me today, and I hope you have some fun, crafty friends that give you belly laughs. Stay tuned for more crafty fun in the future. Thank you for supporting me by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing this video.